Welcome, everybody. It is time for another Sandler webinar. These are free educational webinars that we do every month or so to help share some knowledge, help everybody sell more easily, and for you to get to know Sandler a little bit better. I'm Mike Montague, head coach here at the home office in Sandler, and I'm really excited to welcome a special guest this month. It is our top award winner from the last Sandler Summit, Alana Nicol. Presented at the Sandler Summit this topic about cleaning up your pipeline, and she won our top award. It's called the David H Sandler Award after our namesake, and it's the top award out of the entire network. We give away once a year for the trainer who has delivered really the most value, been the most giving, and the best example of what a Sandler trainer should be around the world. And so, Alana, congratulations, and thanks again for sharing your time and attention and thought leadership with the network.
Thanks for having me. Really excited.
All right, now we're talking about your pipeline. So pipeline mastery and leveraging the 4 Ps to drive revenue. Again, this is a talk she gave at the Sandler Summit. If you want to attend next year, the tickets are available for the 2025 Sandler Summit. You can do that now. I'm going to pop up some comments too. You can join the comments in YouTube anytime and say hi. Tell us where you're from. We got people from British Columbia here, Peters in Purgatory. We've got Omaha, we've got Jersey City, Sacramento, all around the world joining us today. So if you want to participate, you can pop them in the chat and we will make sure we pay attention to those, answer any questions you have. We'll try to save some time for questions at the end, but we do want to hear from you and we want you to participate. Alana will ask a few questions as we go along the way there. But tickets available, sandler.com/summit. If you want to see more cool information like this and hear more about what we have going on for the next year, a ton of stuff planned. We're really excited for that. Let's jump into it. Alana, tell us a little bit about pipeline and maybe where people mess this up and how we can help them get it more accurate. Forecasts, solve challenges in their own life about what they're going to make and whether they're going to keep their job or not, or really know like what deals are real and are going to close and which ones are going to be maybe a little bit further out. Last thing I'll say is I got to repeat my joke I did at the Sandler Summit, which is what do weather forecasters and salespeople have in common? Any forecasts more than 7 days out are completely inaccurate. So Alana is going to help us fix that problem, at least from the sales side. Here you go, Alana.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. As most of you know, whether you're a salesperson or a sales leader, being able to accurately predict, just like the weather, which they get a pass, right? I mean, weathermen can be wrong and it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, in sales, it's not quite the case, right? But being accurately able to forecast what's going to close, when it's going to close, and then being able to navigate our deals effectively is really what we're going to talk about today, because it is a universal challenge and probably one of the most common things we hear over and over again from sales leaders and salespeople, that, I'm just really frustrated in my inability to accurately forecast my sales, which is a direct relation to how you're setting up your deals and how you're navigating from opportunity identification to win or loss. So really, that's what we're here to talk about today. I wish it were like when we were together in Orlando and I could see all your smiling faces smiling back at me. But in this framework, I don't have that ability. So I will be asking everybody that's on today to please participate with me by chat. I'm going to ask for a lot of feedback, ask you to put a lot of things in chat. If there's like questions that are really top of mind as I'm kind of going here, go ahead and put those in the chat. And our hope is that we'll be able to cover a couple of those at the end. But please use the chat. Because I can't see or hear you, it's really important that I know that you're getting out of what you want to get out of the session by using the chat. So hopefully you're willing to do that with me today.
I did forget to jump in with one upfront contract there, Alana, which is the recording will be instantly available on YouTube. So it's like a DVR. It's already recording. People can go in and start from the beginning right now. But as soon as we're done, it'll be up there live. We don't share the PowerPoint and there shouldn't be any handouts that you need today. But if you want to check the recording, just come back to this exact same link anytime after this. It'll be up there. You can share it with people that you think need to hear it and all kinds of good stuff. So back to our presentation.
All right, so let's start with our first chat activity as the group. And I'd like to hear from everyone. Put yes in the chat window if you've done any form of gambling in, let's say, the last 12 months. So you don't have to have gone to Vegas. Obviously, you see commercials on TV nonstop for all those betting apps, so that counts. If you're in a fantasy football, fantasy baseball, you did squares, you've done a bracketology during March Madness, whatever that looks like. There's different varieties, and there's some I'm willing to do and some I aren't. But for the purpose of discussion today, we're going to count any of those as gambling. So if you've gambled in the last 12 months in any of those formats, go ahead and put it in chat. Look like we
I ate some gas station sushi. Does that count?
Yes.
Looks like most of the people are saying yes. We're getting about 90% yeses here. I can't throw them all up here, but yes. Diablo 2 is the game.
Absolutely. So we've got some convicted. Love to play the odds. I like it.
Tony Orlando's here, and he says yes. Tony Orlando is in Vegas for sure. In the last 12 days, 100% from Randy. Awesome. Oh, and Andy Rich is living up to his last name.
Oh, wow,
seven-figure bets there.
I guess. All right. So we've got quite a few. And believe it or not, the stat says that like about 85% of the population has gambled over their lifetime, and about 60% of the US population have gambled in the last 12 months. So I don't know the total number of people on, and I'm not very good at math, but there you go. There's the stats for you. But what I would argue is that if we are in sales, we are all gambling, whether we realize it or not. But I'm going to go to my gamblers first. So any of you that put yes into the chat, I have a bet for you. So if you like to gamble, I'm going to give you an opportunity. So what I want you to do is if you would bet your annual income, that the deals in your pipeline, the ones that you have closable in the next 30 days, if you would bet your annual income that those deals are going to close for what and when you say they are, go ahead and type bet me into the chat window. So we like to gamble. How many of you are going to gamble that everything you've got that says closable in the next 30 days is going to close for what and when you said it would?
All right, we're still waiting for any comments in the chat. We might be waiting here for a while, but I'll throw up anybody that says yes on this one. Kelly says not a chance. Yeah.
I love it. Not a chance, Kelly. Appreciate your honesty, and amazing how we get a little nervous when we put gambling in this context, because some of us are bigger risk takers than others, but even the biggest risk takers are going, nope, not it. But I got to tell you, whether you realize it or not, you are gambling every single day. You are in sales in the decisions that you're making as you're advancing deals. You're gambling bets on resources you're going to allocate, money that's going to come in, decisions that you're going to make. And so our goal today is really kind of help you improve your odds and make you feel a little bit more comfortable about feeling good about what is closable in your pipeline. Some of you might know who these folks are, but these are two of the most well-known gamblers, meaning professional poker players. On the left is Annie Duke, and on the right is Daniel Negreanu. Collectively, they've won over $10 million, and they are professional gamblers. It's what they do for a living. But my argument would be is that these two are gambling a whole lot less every time they play than we are every day in sales, because no decision that they're making is being made without a process, without hard data to allow them to make high quality decisions over time. Now, does that mean they win every time they sit down at the table? No, but they certainly know their odds because they have a process and data that they use to consistently help them improve their odds and improve their winnings. So over the next, I would say 40, 45 minutes today, my goal is really that you walk away with one thing. It's not really a high bar, guys. It shouldn't be, right? One thing that will help you improve your odds for being able to predict the deals that are going to close in your pipeline. So we've got to start with understanding what are your current odds. So back to the chat again. I'd like you to think again about those opportunities that we said that no way in heck am I going to bet on right now. But what's your average win rate today? What are the current odds, your current win rate, your current conversion rate between opportunities that you think are closable and actually close? What do we think? Put in some percentages, and we'll probably expect to be a fair number of discrepancy here, but be honest with yourself. If you're not sure, take your best guess. We may or may not have the data. Thank you, Kelly, for starting us off at 8%. We've got 8%, we got 35%. I would expect we're going to see a wide range of percentages here. 30-ish, we seem to see like that 30-ish percent seems to be pretty consistent here. We've got some lower numbers in 10%. So any of you that have numbers lower than 30%, hopefully it shouldn't be hard to take one thing to improve that number today, because you may end up as you go through here going, wow, all right, well, maybe that's why some of the reasons why I'm having that data. To make you feel better a little bit, one study I read recently is that actually 80% of sales organizations don't have a forecast accuracy greater than 75%. So if you're somewhere in those below 75%, you're with the normal, right? So our goal today is, how do we improve it? How do we get it up a little bit from where it is? And there's some reasons why we're seeing such low numbers today. And it really starts with the challenges that we face in today's environment. The world has changed, right? It's constantly changing. That's the only thing that we can bet on, really, is that it's going to keep changing. But there's been some significant changes in all of these areas. And if you saw Dave's talk at Summit or a prior webinar that did, he kind of went into detail. Dave Matson went into detail in all of these different areas. But the cost of money, more than it used to be. Technology, such a huge player, game changer, being a disruptor every single day. We've got slower decisions being made because of these factors. And the buyer journey today is so different. So that's the one that we're going to really jump into. But all of these are playing factors and challenges that you've got to be able to overcome in order to improve your odds of success in closing a deal. The remote workforce, where we are in talent, we've got a couple years away from having a pretty big talent gap. We got a lot of people retiring, and those people, it takes time to replace that level of expertise. And believe it or not, there's more people leaving the workforce than are actually entering the workforce. So we've got a lot of challenges, a lot of gaps. But for the focus of today's discussion, I really want to dive into the changes that have happened in the buying journey. So you could argue, and this is Gartner data, that it used to be that it was a fairly linear process, meaning there were some pretty clear steps, most of the time pretty linear, on how a buyer goes about making a decision. But now they call it the spaghetti model, which I just love. I call it a hot mess of like jumbled things together. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So this is the same jumbled spaghetti model, but with real things in it. So if you look at the blue navy boxes, those are the steps really of the main steps a buyer is going to go through. They've got to identify they have a problem. They start looking for solutions. Then they start figuring out exactly what they need as part of that solution. And then they're going to select. Well, guess what? It is not a straight path. Look at all the different things that have to go on here, all these different things that are at play. And my favorite part about this graphic, and it's a little hard to see on the screen, but anywhere where you see anything in bold, so that bold blue print, that's where there's buy-in or alignment needed on the buyer's end. So they all have to coordinate and agree at all those different steps. It's no wonder that even if you have a champion, somebody that really wants to bring in your solution or your product, that they've got kind of an uphill battle, right? They've got all these people that they've got to align on their side. So it's no wonder that doing nothing, staying the same, status quo is way easier. And we've got a lot of different people on the call today, so a lot of different things that you sell, but I don't care where you are or what you sell. Your number one competitor today is status quo, doing nothing, staying the same. And it's no wonder that they're going to stay the same, because look at the obstacles that they have to go through in order to make a decision. Pretty alarming. I would love to see some feedback on kind of your thoughts on this as I kind of keep moving a little bit, but
I wanted
wanted
to
to,
jump in there and just
go for
highlight
it.
that I heard a stat that over 50% of deals are lost to no decision, especially enterprise deals is what that was from. I
Yeah,
think it was
I believe it.
53% of enterprise deals end in no decision. So when we're looking at that end of the pipeline, it's not that you lost it to a competitor or anything. It's just they were like, nah, ran out of steam. Somebody said it earlier, decision makers change, somebody replaced, somebody comes into the process late, and it slows the whole thing down and it gets pushed out of the data. So
Oh,
it's
I like Dan's technical term, PETA, to change. That's a good one, Dan. I'm going to steal that one. That's really good. But it's no wonder, right? I mean, and sometimes you might lose, like you said, to status quo. It might come back 2 years from now, 18 months from now. It might not. But this is reality, folks. This is what those organizations are going through in trying to make some decisions. So here's a few more stats for you related to this. So because of that spaghetti hot mess, like I like to call it, right, and I would argue this number seems low, or at least maybe in the Detroit area, that's where I am. And we've got a lot of large automotive manufacturers and some big complex organizations. I would say the dysfunction is probably even higher than 55%. But buying organizations are experiencing dysfunction due to the hot mess, spaghetti model, right? That dysfunction can be things like turnover. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. You got people turning over all the time. A big one that we see a lot are conflicting priorities. They're not aligned internally on what they want to go after, what resources are needed. Sometimes you've got an alignment issue where the left hand's not talking to the right hand. Not to mention when you start talking about global buying groups trying to align all of those factors. So I would argue that the 55% might be even a little bit low, but dysfunction is coming from all of these factors: turnover, lack of alignment, prioritization. And because of that, it means that 74% of people that are buying aren't making what I would call a high quality deal. That's what Gartner calls it. And you could argue what high quality deal means. It could be indecision cause a non high quality deal. It could be change after they've decided, or they're starting to pull things back, or they don't fully implement, or they change once they decided to go. But it's because of all of these factors make it difficult today for buyers to buy. That's the reality. So in order to combat that, our salespeople have to be much better at creating value. And I like to call a salesperson's role today, they have to become really good at being a coach. You've got to coach your buyers and different influencers through the spaghetti. You got to help them navigate what's going to happen next. And so Mike and I know Mike was in my world back in the day before he went to the other side and is working on the home office side of things, right? But we had the ability to, sometimes we ran into VPs of sales or directors of sales. So at least they're salespeople who have some skills and ability to influence and coach a buying decision. Some of you might be calling on plant managers or all kinds of different people, engineers, that guess what? They have to sell internally. So they need a coach to help them be able to navigate the spaghetti, and help their team get to a quality buying decision. But it starts with our ability to help coach them through that process. So how do we do this? How do we deal with all this? It kind of starts with my first P, which is really all about process. So when I say process, I mean your sales process. So how many of you have a defined process from how you identify a deal? So let's skip the prospecting stuff, but you have a live person that you're talking to. So you've identified a potential opportunity, and then all the way to closed won, closed lost. How many of you have a process defined, meaning you know what the steps are, or you've got a process, a playbook for it? So I want you to chat, yes, I have a process. It could be, it's informal. Like we have a process, like we kind of talk about it, we know, but it's informal. Or the really brutally honest people on the call today, I want you to type wing it. Because maybe I'm just winging it. right? It never happens, but maybe you are. So I do see some people saying gate selling, which is fantastic. We're going to show you how to do that a little bit today. We've got some informals. We've got no, we do not. So we do have some wing its, but if you're not comfortable saying that, that's okay. But this is the very first step, is having that clearly defined, and some call it a gated process, so that we know ideally what should the process be. So back to our gamblers here, Daniel here, if you have a subscription to Masterclass and have any interest in gambling at all, and honestly, I'm not a huge gambler, but I was super fascinated when I watched this. He teaches a master class on how to be a better poker player. And so his 6 million plus in winnings is certainly not coming for luck. In this class, he shares all kinds of process and data on how he reads opponents, the complex math and statistics of every possible combo that could come up. But it's a very highly defined process that he uses to guide his decision making. So you're gambling a lot less if you have a highly defined process with good data to guide your decision making. But highly recommend you check it out if you never had it. It's really quite fascinating. Have you ever seen it, Mike, or any?
Well, the math and the
Yeah,
gambling is amazing, and how fast they can do it in their heads, where they just see like what an opponent is or what's there, and they know whether they have the best hand, the second best hand, the probabilities of their losses and wins. It's crazy. I wanted to clarify one thing that I think some people have mentioned, which is like the Sandler selling system is a methodology and not
yes,
a process. We should
correct.
probably talk a little bit about that. There's things that we want to do and there are qualification things that we're looking for, but a
Yes.
process is like, do you do a demo? Is there a trial? Like, how many is there a first decision? How long is the sales cycle typically? Are we getting other decision makers? Is there a presentation to a board? That's more the process. The Sandler methodology can apply to any process of how you get through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to see that a little bit more when we get to some of the things a little bit later, but the methodology can overlay any process. And some of you are in a very transactional sale. If you're selling B2C, maybe very transactional. Others of you may be in longer complex sales where you've got tons and tons of stakeholders and it could take 18 months to close a deal. Well, that's a different process, and you're applying that methodology through that process, and you apply the methodology in a different way in a shorter process. But you're absolutely right. That's the kind of the fuel for your process, right? That helps us get through the process, but it starts with defining how should a deal go, right? What are the major steps that we need to go through in order to close that deal? Way to go, Mike. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, so some more chat activity, and I love all the feedback in the chat. Thank you so much. So the quality of our data directly impacts our decision making. And the reason why the masterclass exists and all those stats and numbers that they know is that's high quality data. If you watch any professional sporting event, right, baseball season right now, so the Tigers, I'll just bring them up, right? They have stats on everything. They know their numbers on everything, which helps them be able to coach, be able to adjust, be able to make decisions because they have that data on everything. So it starts with having really good data about what's going on in your process. So some of you might be kind of low tech, which is totally fine. Maybe your sales process is typed in Excel, still works great. I mean, it's functional, you can do it, right? So you might have it, hopefully at least Excel and not like a piece of paper written somewhere in a file drawer, but you've got Excel. And then more sophisticated could be you're obviously using some version of a CRM, whether it's a really sophisticated one like HubSpot that combines your marketing and your sales all together. So you've got all that data analytics, or it could be something like a pipe drive that's more geared just towards managing your opportunities. But whatever system you use, low tech, high tech, I want you to think a minute about how high is your quality data scale of 1 to 10. So 1 means what data? There is no data. 10 means very predictable, very consistent. It's been proven, it's been adjusted based on real life. That's a 10. So 1 is what data? I don't have any data. 10 is very consistent. It's been proven and adjusted over time. Go ahead and put in the quality of some numbers to represent how you feel about the quality of your data. So I see a 4.5, I see a 2, because this is really the key. And we're going to kind of focus on how to improve the quality of data based what you're looking for in a minute. But the reason why the poker players are so successful is they've got lots in 1.85. I like it. That's very specific.
His data was poor, but his personal evaluation, spot on. Nailed it.
I love it. All right. So we've got, I think the highest number I've seen so far is what, a 6 or a 7? Yeah, something like that. All right. So keep that number in mind because our goal is to help you improve the quality and what it is that you're capturing. So we're going to go back to process for a minute. So the way that we would define a process for your sales is in 3 areas. First is it's staged. So those of you that put gate selling, same thing. We're talking about the main stages, steps of an opportunity. Okay, so once we know the major steps, some of you might have 2 or 3 if it's more of a transactional business. Some of you might have 6, 7. I've got a client that has 7. That's probably the longest that I've seen, but they sell softwares, package custom software integrations to large companies. So they've got a lot that they have to go through. But you know the major steps. Think A, B, C. So maybe it's discovery, maybe it's qualification, and then maybe it's close. I don't know, but you'll have some dedicated steps or stages. From there, you want to apply weighting to those stages, and the weighting should be relatively representative of your real close ratio at that stage. And the earlier in a deal, the less probability that we're going to win, right? If I'm still in the prospect stage, I might have a 10% ability to close that. So I might set that at 10%. But anything we have in those late stage deals that we're talking about a minute ago, right, should be 70, 80% probably. We think those are going to close. So the further along we get in our process, the higher the possibility for closing it. So they should be weighted. Most CRM systems come with out of the box weighting. That may or may not be the right weighting for you. So really making sure that over time we're challenging ourselves and going, is that really accurate for us? Because if I've got it set at 25%, but it's more like 10%, well, then I have a problem. So we use the data and adjust over time. But most importantly, once we know the stages with weighting, we've kind of defined with some clarity and criteria what each stage means. And if you think about it, we call it exit criteria, meaning here's the things that we have to uncover, discover before we get to progress on to the next one. And I'll give you some more information on that in a minute. So here's a super simple, very generic. You probably have a demo phase or a trial phase. The client I was referencing a few minutes ago, they have a workshop stage. So these aren't necessarily going to be what you call them. But a suspect means it's a live person. I know I'm talking to Mike, but I don't really know yet if Mike actually needs what it is I do. So my exit criteria for Mike might be trying to confirm, like, does he even need what I do? And is he in my wheelhouse of what I could potentially help him with? Then a prospect is like, well, he's in the wheelhouse, but is there anything that he got going on that's going to really compel them to do something or not? And then qualification, we'll come back to that one in a minute, is really truly understanding everything at play to qualify an opportunity. And then once we've done all that, you could be in your proposal stage, your quote stage, whatever that looks like. That closable is typically they've seen the full scope of work, whatever that looks like, and we're looking to kind of make a decision. And what happens here is without criteria, which I'm going to give you some examples in a minute, we see a lot of this going on. So we call it leapfrogging. I had a client who called out his head of Mexico team in the best way. It was the best because we were going through a group of leaders, 6 leaders on a call. And we're talking about their stages because they had a newly put in a CRM, and we were kind of confirming each of the criteria for the stages. And the head of Mexico says, well, we keep everything at 10%. And then once we know everything, then we push it forward to theirs are like 70% is their next stage. So he's like 70%. And so you got to love the president. He goes, you know what we call that? sandbagging, right? So it can be very difficult to really coach and plan resources and inventory levels and things like that. If it's really more than 10%, it should be showing progress. We should be moving it along the way. The other thing we see really, really commonly is salespeople with high optimism. Oh yeah, that's definitely closable. But really, there isn't any criteria. It's more of the, well, I hope to win. I want to win. I need to win. It might be one of those that we've got it overstaged, but it's overstaged because we haven't really defined what the criteria is that we're looking for at each stage. So to keep the chat opportunity going, I'm kind of curious, just go ahead and type in how many steps or gates are in your stages. The example up here is 4. Some of you might have more, some of you might have less. And happy ear syndrome, Jose, we're going to even
real.
talk about it. It's
real.
so real. Yeah, it's probably one of the most common sales weaknesses that we see, honestly. All right, so go ahead, type in how many stages are there in your process. I see someone else with 4 also. Just keep typing. All right, so what I mean by exit criteria is really all about the criteria. And again, this is very generic. There's some like abbreviations in here that you may or may not know what they mean. But in a like big picture format, when we're talking about a suspect, we want to at least say that, we've identified that they fall into what it is that we do. When we get to that prospect stage, we call it pain at Sandler. So I've confirmed the initial problem that they say they have, and I started digging a little bit deeper. I probably want to ask, even at this prospect stage, for who else they're talking to or who else they're considering. UFC is a Sandler term that stands for upfront contract, but I've set a very firm upfront contract around what's going to happen going into my discovery meeting. And discovery meeting is nothing more than starting this qualification phase. You could call it a lot of different things. The qualified bucket, there's a lot of things under here. Right? I put in some of the ones that I see over and over get missed, and we overstage a deal because maybe we didn't fully understand what the competitive offering was or situation. We missed some influencers or decision making. We're going to talk about that in a bit. We have confirmed commitment for action, meaning they actually said they want to do something about this instead of just explore it for future purposes. We've done a little bit of alignment on about what to expect in budget, lots of things that we see here that get missed. And so if I miss any of these things, it shouldn't be enclosable because I haven't truly qualified it yet. And you're going to see that play out as a theme here over your organization. So I'm going to ask you this. I would like you to think about how well in your companies is this documented? Do we have criteria? The one I'd love to know the most about is how many of you truly have documented the criteria necessary to truly say it's a qualified deal, which means typically our win percentage is more than 50%. Our confidence is more than 50% at this point. And we've got kind of consistency across our organization. So tell me if you've got criteria, say, yes, well-defined criteria. But then another thing I want you to think about is if I were to ask everyone on your sales team for their criteria, is it consistent? Or are we all kind of winging it? And then I see a lot of not documented, right? And if it's not documented, guess what? It's open to interpretation, and everybody's going to have different criteria. So this might be your single biggest action item coming out of today is to go back and do this with your team. If you're already in Sandler, go back to your Sandler coach and say, hey, you know what? Can we do us a favor and let's kind of review our criteria? Maybe it's out to date. This changes. This is a fluid discussion here oftentimes. So this might be your single biggest takeaway is trying to define this. Mike?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on this one because I think especially with qualified and closable, objective criteria is important. Like, have we sent the proposal? Like, it's not closable because the salesperson goes, yeah, it's closable. I mean, it could happen, right? It's closable because the proposal has been sent. And if you're using sophisticated CRM, some people mentioned Salesforce or HubSpot, you could actually include those in there. So they have marked, you have typed in what those pains are in order to become qualified, not just like, yeah, they got a pain. Like we're taking the salesperson's word for it, and they're saying it's about 85%, so that must be in the closable range. No, we want like specific, defined, and measurable criteria that are objective. One that I like the most is the other side has taken an action. So it's not that I did something, I sent over the proposal. Well, did they ask for a proposal or have they responded to it? What did the buyer do that qualified them to move to the next step? I think is a big key there.
Absolutely. And that objective, real, tangible stuff is going to come back here in a couple of slides. And I want to really quickly point out, Jose said, yes, but sellers don't apply it. So that's a very, very common thing that we see, Jose. And you're not going to like my response to this, but that means you as a leader need to change the way we're running pipeline meetings and change the way we're doing deal coaching with our people, because we should be running our pipeline meetings to this criteria and coaching our sellers using this to help really flush out any overstaging, any lack of missing objective information, etc. So it can be written down, but it's my belief that the leadership team owns the implementation of this, because it's not just that the sellers do it, but the leaders are leading and coaching using the criteria as well. Great comments here. Great comments. I could keep on this all day. I'm really kind of passionate about this, but I'm looking at the time going, you better keep moving, Alana. So I'm going to keep moving. So the next step, which happens to be kind of funny, is keeping moving, is all about progress, right? Are we really making progress consistently on our deals? I coach a lot of clients where you're looking at their pipeline and there's stuff that's 120 days old that hasn't moved. Right? So we're not making progress. We have to make regular progress consistently to move or reject, kick out, which we're going to talk about in a minute as well. So progress starts with what I'm going to call a clear future commitment. And sometimes we take what our salespeople say to us and think it's a clear future commitment, but I'm reaching out next week, or I'm supposed to hear back from them in a week or so, is not a clear future commitment, right? We have to get really good at defining those clear future commitments, getting that commitment ahead of time. So if I'm trying to book a next meeting, well, then I want to make sure that meeting is booked before I leave. But I've coached a lot of salespeople over the years that, oh, well, I'm reaching out next week. That's not a clear future step. I should hear something soon. Not a clear future commitment. So we've really got to get the actually, what are we looking for, by when, with who? That clarity needs to come on at every interaction to be able to really make regular progress. I saw something about an anniversary cake, which just makes me laugh.
for old opportunities, Jose nailed it. I think we should celebrate.
Jose, you're
I was
killing
also
it.
going to chime in because you hit a great hot button issue there, which is also in these scorings, is you can demote people. So you can actually, it can happen. Sales managers and stuff is we do this in marketing too with lead scoring. It's like if they haven't taken action in 120 days, they reset, they get minus 50 points on their scores for that. Yep. That's definitely a great one.
It's a regular coaching conversation with clients and occasionally even with my Sandler guys, right? Help me understand why you have the stages here. And I'm not hearing this or this, so I think you need to push it back, right? That should be part of how we're running sales meetings is we're moving stuff backwards instead of forwards, definitely. And that might be somebody else's huge takeaway today. They're going to go back and go through their pipeline and readjust where everything is
and
sitting.
Buy some anniversary cakes. Keeping deals in there for 365 days.
I love it. Jose's killing it. I love it. All right. So I'm going to go back to the gamblers again. Annie's written a lot of books. Thinking in Bets is a really cool book that she wrote, if you're interested, on how to guide really good decision making. And I'm not going to read it exactly on the screen. You can read it, but it's 100% dependent on the quality of the information that we're using. So back to that data again is really the key here. And this is where Happy Years comes in, guys. This is evidence over emotions. I really want us to start thinking that we need to be looking for evidence, like a detective, like an investigator. I'm looking for evidence. But what we normally hear is, hey, Mike, how'd that sales call go? What are you going to say? Went great. I heard this morning by a peer, it said RRG, really, really good. Okay, what the heck does that mean, right? So we have to get really good at being detectives or investigators looking for evidence of that criteria. So this next screen, if you're familiar with Sandler, will look familiar. This is our methodology, right? So on the right-hand side, this is our methodology. If you're new to Sandler, all I really need you to know is that our methodology is what we call a consultative approach, meaning it's a dialogue, it's a discovery, it's a continual process with heavy focus on qualifying. You notice that qualifying section there, all that dark blue, that's where a lot of the evidence is that we're looking for. We're looking for evidence around the actual problem. So just because they say that they have bad quality or bad service or whatever doesn't mean they're actually going to do anything about it. So it's all about taking what that issue or opportunity is that they bring you, figure out why it's happening. So the what, the why it's happening, but then at the end of the day, it's all about impact. And I teach my salespeople, it's the what, the why, and the so what. Impact is fully defined by the so what. If it really doesn't impact their day, their bottom line, their job, their customers, then they probably aren't going to do anything about it, because look at the spaghetti hot mess that they have to go through in order to get something done. So really being able to truly uncover and quantify the impact. You can tell me how much it's costing them to live with it. So what is the cost of doing nothing? How have I quantified the impact in time, dollars, etc.? That's true evidence. Yeah, they're really frustrated. So what? So just keep asking yourself, so what? All right. Competitive landscape. I got to tell you, I see a lot of deals lost because we missed a lot in the competitive landscape. Who else is involved? Why might they win versus why might we win? I've got a client situation where they were down to two people, but one of their solution, they couldn't do everything. The other provider could do everything. Well, that really changes how I'm going to go about that deal. If I know that they're looking for somebody that can build the building and do all that stuff, but I can't do all of that, well, then I better be talking about that to see how important that really is. But we see a lot of gaps in truly understanding the competitive landscape. I love this one. I could spend all day on this one, but I don't have time, which is buyer success criteria. What does success look like to them? How are they defining success? What's their criteria? Obviously, they have to be willing and able to change, willing and able to invest. And then the decision-making process is quite complicated today. There's 6 factors that probably have 16 plus on each one of them, which is all the who, what, when, where, why, and how they're going to go about making that decision. And unless I understand and have evidence of these things, then when I get to this presenting of the solution, I've got to be presenting it in a way that's in alignment with everything that I know. But what we see a lot is quick to quote, quick to propose, responding to RFQs and RFPs without really understanding and having evidence of what's going on here. And those of you that are Sandler clients know that this is the heart of what you learn in the methodology and how do I apply that to my own sales process. Let's talk about influencers for a minute. Some of you, if you're in super transactional, you might not have 14, but I promise you have more than a couple, right? The number of influencers involved on deals today has skyrocketed because of that spaghetti mess. Look at all those people that we have to have aligned. And guess what? You're not getting access to all of them. So I just want you to think about a current deal in your pipeline. I want you to type in some real numbers for you. How many influencers do you think are involved in one of your opportunities that you're currently going after? Let's just get some real numbers while we keep going here. So the other challenge we see today is the ability to map the influence. So it used to be you could just look at an org chart and that would be indicative of how the decision's being made. Well, I got to tell you, just because Mike's at the top of the org chart doesn't mean he has the most amount of influence. So it's absolutely critical today that your sales teams are mapping out influencers, who they are, what their advocacy is, which is, are they pro you? Are they kind of neutral? Or are they a detractor, meaning they're pro your competition, what's their advocacy score for you, and what's their amount of influence. And the reality is the org chart doesn't tell you everything. It's often deceiving. Your ultimate decision maker may not be at the top of the org chart. So you've got to flush this out through conversations with lots of people. And I see a lot of sellers missing opportunities to gain relationships with some, I would say, bit players or people in the organization at the operational level that can help you understand how these things go together. And then there's software tools and extra things that you can do to really map this out in today's seller, but it's a huge gap in salespeople. We're not in front of enough people. We don't know how the influence works. And when we're selling in teams, so those of you that sell in teams, maybe your program managers or your engineers or your marketing or your product, whatever it looks like, are selling together, this is even more important. And Dave talked a lot about it in previous sessions, the ability to map our selling team against their buying team. It's critical today in order to successfully win deals. Looks like we've got quite a few. I've got 6 to 15, 8 to 10, so lots of decision makers. So one opportunity for you might really be around better mapping, better understanding the influence, and better team selling, because it's the reality and it's not going away. It's just going to get worse. All right, let's move on to my favorite, which is pruning. So pruning means disqualifying deals, kicking them out. So when is the last time you actually said to a prospect, I really don't think that this is a priority right now. Totally okay. I'm going to go ahead and call this one good for now, right? Or we've just looked at that anniversary cake opportunity at 120 and gone, yeah, this really isn't real. This just needs to flat been taken out because it's cluttering everything else. So pruning is all about, if we take it back to the gambling stage, right? Knowing when to fold them. The ultimate gambler, right? You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. If you're not a Kenny Rogers fan, I'm sorry, but that's a classic and it will now be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. So we have to get disciplined as an organization and as sellers, really challenging what's real. And a good way to know that you've got this problem is you've got some stalled or stuck opportunities in your funnel. So if I were to take your opportunity pipeline and turn it in a funnel, it's getting stuck somewhere. Sometimes it's getting stuck at the top, meaning we got a lot of early stage stuff, but nothing's really moving through. Sometimes it's more stuck in the middle. Everything's sitting there at about 50%, right? It just hasn't moved. Or the most common I really see is we've got the things really in that late stage, but they're not really closable because we really couldn't win something that isn't closable. And that's really the big lesson here. It's impossible to close something that's not qualified. So you've really got to take a look at those opportunities, clear out what's is not real. And then we have a little technique that I'm going to do real quick on how to decide is it real or not, get some feedback from your buyer. So if I'm selling to Mike, I might have tried to attempt and he's like ghosting me. I haven't heard from him in a while and it's still sitting there. And my boss keeps asking me, what's the deal with the Sandler gig? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So here's how I'm going to handle this with Mike. I'm going to send a communication to Mike that sounds something like this. Mike, my last couple of attempts to connect have gone unanswered. I get the sense that this is probably no longer a priority for you at this time. Totally okay. I'm going to go ahead and just close it out for now. If by some chance I might have misread the situation, let me know, but I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Thanks. Any version of that, I promise you, you will know immediately where you stand. If Mike responds, because his response is going to sound something like, go for it, Mike, give me a response. What if you were still interested? What would it sound like?
No, not yet. We've got this on the budget. There's a board meeting next Wednesday.
Yes, or this came up, or I've been sick, or I've been traveling. You're going to hear some version of something, right, that's going to come up that'll tell you, okay, it's still something here. It's not dead. If I hear crickets back from Mike, guess what? It's over, guys. You got to move on. That's not your sign to try again in 2 weeks, unfortunately. But it's a proven method. We call it the close the file method. Go ahead and try it. I promise you, you will know where you stand if it's still real. But we've got to get better at kicking out the junk, the stuff that's not real. Stop hoping as a strategy that maybe, It's going to be different now. And I get it, guys. It doesn't mean it's dead forever, but it means it's dead for now, right? And we got to move on so that I can go find through prospecting what is real. So our ability to really disqualify deals or prune them out is directly proportionate to how much prospecting we're doing. And there's a Sandler long time rule that's this: the strength of your conviction is directly proportionate to the strength of your pipeline. I'll say it one more time. The strength of your conviction is directly proportionate to the strength of your pipeline. It's really hard to close the file and disqualify a deal when you only have 3 and you really, really need a sale. So for majority of companies, sometimes what happens is I've got to increase my prospecting. And today's day and age, we can't just call somebody one time. We can't just rely on our existing customers. You have to have a prospecting strategy. You need to know how much of my business needs to be coming from existing customers, because how much should I be spending time trying to grow that business versus new business? We see a lot of sellers hanging out in maintenance land, which they define as account management. But it's really maintaining. We're not really proactive prospecting, looking for those opportunities on a consistent basis. I would tell you that in today's day and age, you've got to have a minimum of 3, probably more like 5 different prospecting activities that you're doing on a consistent basis. Asking for introductions is the number one overlooked prospecting activity, because we get introductions, but you get a whole lot more if you ask for them. Networking. People should be back networking again. We didn't have to do it for a couple of years because you couldn't. But whatever those prospecting activities mean, and I don't mean just cold calling. If you just start asking for introductions on a regular basis, you're going to see a whole lot more deals pop into the top of your pipeline because of targeted prospecting. But we see a lot of under usage of prospecting. We're so focused on the deals in our funnel that sometimes what we have to do is just increase our behavior, start going after more and knowing what you're going after.
When I think about that funnel, I really think about we need like 8 to 10 times the number of deals we need at the bottom of the funnel. So you shared those percentages earlier, but regardless of what your actual numbers are, it's usually about like 50% of the prospects become suspects, become qualified, become presented to or closable. And so if you do that math real quick, it's like 8 to 16 times the number of deals we need to get through that pipeline, which means we should be doing a lot more prospecting at the front to make sure that these are moving through. Then we're not putting all our eggs in 1 or 2 baskets.
Absolutely, Mike. And I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm looking at the clock and we're running up against it. I want to have the opportunity to kind of see what you learned and what you want to do here. But we went through a lot of things. What I want you to put in chat now is think through what's the single biggest change. I told you only had to walk away with 1. If you have more, great, you get bonus. But what's the single biggest change you could make to implement that you think could improve your ability to predict, advance, and close deals? So just start thinking through them while I start reviewing. If you've got questions, now's the time to put a couple in, and we'll take 1 or 2 if we've got some time. So I'm just going to go ahead and recap while you're putting in your biggest implementation. What's the one thing you want to walk out doing here? Is it related to having a better defined process? Maybe you're going to go back and redefine or define from the beginning, what are my major steps and do I have criteria for them? Maybe I don't have criteria. It could be that your biggest is really all around progressing in those clear future commitments. Am I consistently getting progress with evidence? Am I uncovering the right evidence that tells me where I really am in this deal? It could be my favorite, which I just saw on the takeaway, right? Pruning deals. Yeah. Kicking it out. Go get rid of the junk. Take the garbage out. Take the garbage out. Maybe try to close the file on the ones that you're not sure, but it could be really taking it out so you know really you're obvious with yourself. You're honest with yourself. I mean, around what's real. Or it could be, you know what? I've got a prospect problem. I better go put a whole lot more in so that I can go ahead and get more into my funnel. So it could be any of those. Looks like I see quite a few. Next future commitments, next commitments, evidence, got to navigate. So Mike, do you see any questions in here? Anything that we want to kind of call out, or I'll let you kind of take it from here?
Yeah, a bunch of great stuff in there. A lot of people doing the evidence over emotion there, the next steps, navigating the spaghetti. We got to go back to the beginning. You've shared so much great stuff today that I was just like, wow, I forgot that we went all the way back to that. Andy said, do you mind if I ask you a tough question? And no, we're only taking easy ones for the next 5 minutes. But asking that and just saying, is it over? Right. And getting to the end to prune those things. Prospecting is always top of the list. I saw some other great stuff up here earlier too. A couple of people mentioned it. Mike did about the CARE document. Could you tell us a real quick what CARE stands for and what this is if people haven't heard that before?
Yeah, so you heard me say you need to know how much of your business needs to come from existing versus new. So that's really expanding on CARE. So the existing business, K stands for keep. That's the business that you're going to keep. You want to keep. It's good business, but there isn't any more potential. You've maximized the amount of wallet share you can get with that customer. The alternative is expand, meaning they're already buying something from you, but there's more available. And the thing we see the biggest is we have salespeople treating expands like keep. We're not proactively expanding. And then the A is all about attain. So that's that net new business. Could come from brand new, which is attain, or R, which is recapture, meaning we used to work with them. We haven't, and we should go back to them. It's amazing how often that gets overlooked in prospecting strategies, as we forget to go back to people that used to buy from us and get them buying from us again.
Mike had another one in here real quick, which is you mentioned when things get stuck in the high, middle, or late in the funnel. Could you maybe define what those are and how we would move them? Like if we get people stuck at the top, what's the problem? If we get people stuck at the end, you did kind of mention that's probably we didn't qualify hard enough. But can you talk about maybe the top or middle a little bit more?
Yeah, so sometimes when we get stuff at the top, you've got a bunch of, it could be a couple things. It could be that we've got a bunch of marketing qualified leads that aren't really sales qualified leads. So they're not really the right types of leads, and so they're stuck there. It could be that we don't have people responding to them. I'm sure it never happens to anybody here, but the fact that we went to a trade show, we talked to somebody, and then thought there was something and then didn't go back and talk to them again, or I reached out to them but my follow-up wasn't there. And I hate the word follow-up, but it's really consistency in being able to outreach. So sometimes we see things for one of those reasons in the beginning. The middle is all about qualification, and the end is really all about qualification. We should see very little go south in the end. It happens, right? But if we truly are in that late stage deal and we've done all of that qualifying, then it's gonna move one way or another to us or to someone else if we did it correctly.
Alana, again, thank you so much for your time and effort in this presentation. I know you did a lot of work to put it together. I think you've appeared on the How to Succeed podcast that I host. If you're not subscribed to that, look up How to Succeed on your favorite app. Check it out. Presenting at the summit. And then again here for us, we'll keep moving. This is always a big one. Pipeline and accurate forecasts are a tough challenge. If you need more information or you want specific help with this, reach out to your local Sandler trainer. Alana is in Detroit. We have over 200 locations. Go to Sandler.com, find one near you if you don't already have a trainer. And then if you enjoy topics like this and you want 2 days of awesome networking with 1,000 other go-getters like yourself and hearing topics like this, join us at next year's Sandler Summits. Tickets available at Sandler.com/summit. We'll see you next time, everybody. Good luck. Good selling. Sandler Summit returns to the Orlando World Center Marriott on April 2nd and 3rd of 2025. Don't miss out on the premier sales and leadership event of the year. Reserve your seat now at Sandler.com/summit.